We are so honored and excited to host this webinar, which is very unique on the Navajo Kinship and the concept of harmony. I'm Lisa Jernigan, co-founder of Amplify Peace, and it is truly my honor to welcome you as together we listen and learn from our special guest, David Delmar. Well, at Peace, we follow a model of listen, learn, and live. How do we listen and learn so we can live differently? We are about stories. We're about listening to the stories and the voices, primarily the ones that we haven't heard or that we don't get opportunities to really listen to. There's a term, and many of you might be familiar with this, but it's called confirmation bias. And it's a tendency to search for, to interpret, to favor information that confirms and supports our beliefs and our values. And it's like, you know, people, confirmation values where you just will watch news and channels, you'll just read books or articles that support your values and your opinions. And that's called confirmation bias. So what we want to do is tonight take you maybe out of that, out of comfort zones, because it's really easy in our culture and in our time to really surround ourselves with people who think just like us, who share the same opinions we do, who look like us, and it's very comfortable, and we can just kind of settle in that place. But what if we step out of those places and we allow ourselves to be with people that share different opinions, that have different culture values, and we really position ourselves to listen and learn to them. And so we can truly live differently and expand our worldview and our understanding of people and just the world. Well, I can't tell you how excited I am to learn from David and from his wife, Teresa, and from Carissa and Mikhail, as they share insights, experiences, and the stories about their life as Navajos and about the Navajo people. So for some of you, hearing some of the things that David will share and that will be shared tonight might be brand new ideas and new concepts, but we hope that this will just be the beginning for you in a journey of curiosity and understanding the Native American culture and the Native American people. I have just fallen in love. I have so many friends from the Native American culture that I'm learning so much from, and they're just become dear friends. And so I feel like they make me better. And so tonight I'm really excited that you get to sit under some teaching and some life experience. And Amplify Peace, we provide resources, ongoing conversations through podcasts, through webinars, and through our website. And we're going to be offering later on in August what we call a mentor, which is really just a mini introduction into the broad view of the Native Americans and their history. And that is will be facilitated and taught by Christine Fire Thunder, and she'll be facilitating that. And you can get more information about that and to register for that on our website at Amplify Peace. So we invite you to join us, as together we really do believe that we can create a better story and a better future together, and it starts now. Well, back in May, some of you may have been on a call with us. We did a webinar with David's daughter and son-in-law, Mikhail and Carissa Sundas. And at that time, the Navajo Nation was in the national news and the realities that were affecting them with the COVID-19 virus. And so we had the opportunity to really sit and hear from them personally what it was really like, what's really happening, what the effects COVID had on culture there and the dynamics that, and it was just really a powerful time of really learning. So as we move forward tonight, before we dive in with David, I'm just gonna ask you a couple of things. To please keep your mics muted so that we can keep the noise down. And if you have any questions that come up, like if something is said and you wanna know more, if you would type that in the chat. And then Roxanne Small, later on, we'll be kind of going through those as time allows, and we'll try to ask David some of those questions and get some answers. So keep that in mind as we go through it. Well, I want to introduce David now, because it's time for what you came for, and that's to hear from David Delmar. And many of you probably read his bio as you registered, but David has more than 25 years of experience in ministry and work on the Navajo Nation, and he's previously taught the Navajo language as well as Navajo government and history for 6 years at the high school, community college, and university levels. And David he gives this presentation, he does a lot of consultant work, he's out and about a lot using his voice voice, sharing his knowledge and his expertise and his understanding of Navajo culture. And so we are beyond honored tonight to have David and his wife Teresa and his family with Carissa and Mikhail join us tonight. And so David, thank you again for just being with us. And I know, as is culturally appropriate, you're going to introduce yourself to us too in Navajo. So thank you again, David. And I'm going to turn this over to you.
Thank you, Lisa. Yat she ya kinlichini nishler aro todichine bashichin and nash ejetopai dashe do tachine dashinale kot ego eden nenshli don le Ts'ah Bii Kin holiede akida nast anado e isinasha. So that's a normal Navajo introduction. I am Red House, born for Bitterwater. My maternal grandfathers are Zuni Edgewater, and my paternal grandfathers are Red Flowing into Water. I'm originally from a place called Akidanast Ane. It's near Inscription House in northern Arizona on the Navajo Reservation. So I'll have Teresa introduce herself.
My clans are Deer Springs, and then I am born for the Salt Clan. My maternal grandfathers are the Edgewater people, and then my paternal grandfathers are the Rock Gap people, and I'm from Coal Mine Mesa, Arizona.
So we'll explain how that works in our culture in a little bit. So let's go ahead and get into the PowerPoint. So this is the Navajo Cultural Awareness presentation that I've been using, just with a few changes for our audience tonight. And so here's just a picture of one of the deities in Navajo. You have the rainbow, which represents sovereignty. We have the 4 sacred mountains. We have the corn in the middle that represents growth. And of course, the rain. The dark clouds and the white clouds, those are very important symbols to us as well. Go ahead, move on. Go ahead and start the video there.
Proud, forgotten, Indian, Navajo, Blackfoot, Inuit, and Sioux. Survivor, spiritualist, patriot. Sitting Bull, Hiawatha, and Jim Thorpe. Mother, father, son, daughter, chief. Apache, Pueblo, Choctaw, Chippewa, and Crow. Underserved, struggling, resilient. Squanto, Red Cloud, Tecumseh, and Crazy Horse. Rancher, teacher, doctor, soldier. Seminole, Seneca, Mohawk, and Creek. Mills, Will Rogers, Geronimo. Unyielding, strong, indomitable. Native Americans call themselves many things. The one thing they don't.
Go ahead, next frame. So Adrienne Keene asks the question, how can we expect mainstream support for sovereignty, self-determination, nation building, and jobs when 90% of Americans only view Native people as one-dimensional stereotypes situated in the historic past? 90%, can you imagine that? Go ahead, next frame. So a teacher poses this simple problem to a class. There were 4 birds sitting in a tree, she says. You take a slingshot and shoot one of them. Kind of a violent picture, but. So how many are left, she asks. Next. 3, answered one student with certainty. 1 taken away from 4 leaves 3. Next. 0, says another student with equal certainty. If you shoot one bird, the others will fly off. Kind of a neat demonstration, right, of one's perspective. Go ahead. How does one's perspective play a role in answering that question? You think about the video. What does one perspective play? How does that perspective play a role in that video? And then how does the perspective play a role in how many people view Native Americans in today's society? And then this third question about the birds, how does one's perspective play a role in answering the question? And it's all about diversity, right? Diversity. Depending on whose perspective you're looking at, you're going to come up with a different answer. About the mascot, there's a lot of debate about the mascots because of people's perspectives. There's a lot of debate about how Native Americans are viewed, the stereotypes and so on, because of perspective. And then of course, when they used to put on these California achievement tests, right? A lot of the minority students would get low scores on them because they answered these questions from a different perspective than what the question was meant to. And so it didn't take diversity into question. But diversity is a question that today we must recognize, we must understand, we must value, and we must manage. Go on. So we're going to present to you today our perspective, the Navajo perspective. And the Navajo perspective, there are 2 things, 2 main things that we would like to touch upon. One is K'eh, and the other one is the philosophical viewpoint that they have. So the first part is K'eh. K'eh talks about the Diné kinship system. It's a connectedness that we have. And that connectedness is a fundamental theme of life for the Navajo people. And it requires a constant awareness of the relationship and the interdependence you have with the world around you. And that includes your family, includes your relatives, extended family, includes the community in which you live, extends out even into other peoples across the globe, and even into the environment. And so it's not just people that we're talking about when we say the net kinship system, because we have a relationship even with the environment in which we live, according to the way Navajos think about it. So can be divided. We'll touch on 3 things as we talk about here. Go ahead. Go ahead, move on, okay? So there's 3 things associated with it that we'd like to touch on today. The first one is the kinship that we have through clan affiliation. Then the next one would be the values that are associated with that, and it can empower a person within the community. And then there's the affective action, the action that is associated with the affection related to the effective action and the solidarity that this kinship system produces within the Navajo society. But it even extends beyond that. So move on one more time. So the idea of can also extend into the spirit world, as it says here, the That's acknowledging yourself to the holy people through precious offerings. So even then, we get up early in the morning and greet the dawn. And with the dawn comes these holy people. And we greet them every morning. That's the practice of most Navajos, is that they get up early in the morning to greet the holy people as they come through in the early morning. So the that we have, that we express, even extends into the spirituality of the Navajo people.
I would like to also add that the cornerstone of teaching within the home is always, wherever you go, to always identify yourself. So the act that we have, how we introduce ourselves, it sets boundaries. So when you introduce yourselves, individuals can identify through their own identity and then practically pinpoint where an individual comes from. And to some extent also it has a history. And then through that aspect also, it provides information on clan personality traits that they also have. So when we greet people, we identify ourselves, we're able to establish kinship. So with that kinship, we will identify one another as either our grandfather or our paternal grandfather, our mothers, fathers, brothers, sisters. So then for us, we know how to, quote unquote, behave among those that we greet.
Mm-hmm. Go on. So kinship through the clan affiliations. Let's start with that. Go ahead and click. So Navajo society started with 4 original clans. There's a long extended story about this, but we're just going to touch on the basics of it. So the 4 original clans were Todic'ini, which is bitter water, Hashishni, the mud people, Kiya'ani, towering house people, and then Honagahni, one who walks around you. But the other translation has to do with your back. Honagah is your back. And so Tro, if you start with the first word again, Tro, Todic'ini, Tro has to do with water. Dich'i has to do with bitterness, or even like if you're talking about chili, if chili is dich'i, that means it is hot, right? So Todic'ini, bitter water. And then the I that you see at the end of the word, that's what we call a noun maker. So it turns the whole word into a noun. So that can be translated as one who is Todic'ini, one who is bitter water. Then Hashishni, Hashish is mud. Kiya'ani, the K-I actually is a shortened version of kin, K-I-N, which means house or building, kin. Ya'ah has to do with it standing up, towering. And the Ya can even talk about the sky. Ya'ah, it extends upward into the sky. Kin Ya'ah, Kiya'ani, one who is towering house. Then Honagahni, again, Honagah can be the back, or others translate it as one walking around you. So the one who walks around you. So those were the 4 original clans. And then as people began to multiply, the Navajo people began to multiply, they would settle in all these different areas. And as they moved about nomadically and came across other groups of people, other groups of Navajos, they would see certain characteristics about that group. And so they would give that group a name, and that became their clan name. So let's say there was a group of people living over here by the mountain. And so as we came by, we saw this group of people living by the mountain. So we say those people live by the mountain or near the mountain. So we would start referring to them as the ones who live by the mountain. Ts'ah Bii, right? Ts'ah Bii became a clan. And then as we traveled on, we run into this group of people that were living out on the plain in the valley. And so those ones we refer to, the ones living in the valley. So Haltsoni, they became known as Haltsoni. That became their clan name. Then as we traveled over to the west, we run into this group of people, some Hogans there. And we noticed that those people lived in Hogans. And there were a lot of Hogans that they lived. So those are the ones that live in many Hogans. So they became known as Hogan Shan, the many Hogans. And then as we travel up towards the north with our sheep and cattle, we'd run into another group, and these people had a lot of goats in their herds. So these people had a lot of goats. So they became known as what? Anybody? Many goats. Come on. No audience participation here. Many goats, right? They became known as the ones with many goats. So that's how people, because of the characteristics of their groups, they received clan names. And that's how clan names came about, extended clan names. And then today there are probably more than 100 clans on the Navajo reservation. So when you go somewhere, like Teresa was saying, you always identify yourself by your clans, and that way people know how they might be related to you. So let's move on to the next one. So this becomes the personal clan introduction, and that's what Teresa and I use to introduce ourselves to our audience tonight. So go ahead. When you introduce yourself, the first clan you introduce is your maternal clan. That's the one that's given to you through your mom. So your mom's clan is the one with which you yourself identify with. So my mom is Kinlechitnu, so I would say Kinlechitni Nishlin. Nishlin means I am Kinlechitni. I am Red House, right? Maternal clan, that's the first one you introduce. The second clan you introduce is your father's clan, your paternal clan. So I would say Todechini Bashishchin. Shishchin means I am born. Then the ba you see in the middle means for. I am born for the ones who are bitter water. Todechini Bashishchin. Then the third clan you introduce is your mom's father's clan, your maternal grandfather's clan. Now, Shitshe means my grandfather, maternal grandfather. The da that you see there, the da, just pluralizes the word. Are my paternal grandfathers, da Shitshe. Then Nashteja is a word that we use to refer to the Zuni people, the Zuni tribe. And then Tupbahe is water's edge. Tra is the same as Tro that you see up above. Tro and Tra refer to water. But Ban means alongside or along the edge of. The Zuni Edgewater are my maternal grandfathers. So I can truly say that I am related to the Beach Boys. I'm going to inherit their wealth when they pass on. Anyways, so the fourth clan you introduce, go ahead and click, is your paternal grandfather's clan. So that's Tachini Dashinale. Shinale means my paternal grandfather. And then the Da means it's plural, right? Dashinale. Kachini, Ka again is water. Chitni is red. The chi, see that chi? The same thing that you see up here in Kinchitni. The chi, right? Red. Red flowing into water. Those are my maternal grandfathers. So I would introduce myself that way. And if I meet someone out there on the street, just one-on-one, I run into them at Kmart or something like that. Oh, no, there's no more Kmart, huh? I run into them at Walmart, okay? I just stated myself. So I run into someone at Walmart and I say, hey, I'm this person and this is my clan. What is your clan? This is all in Navajo. And they say, hey, I'm Kinlechitni too. So when he's Kinlechitni, when that person is Kinlechitni and I'm Kinlechitni, that means we're brother and sister. So I would refer to that person as my brother or my sister. So that's how clan relationships established. And if they're from my father's clan, I would call them my father or my aunt. If they're a woman, I would call them my paternal aunt. So If I run into anybody who's Horechini, I say, hey, that's my dad's clan. You're my daddy. I can call them daddy, or I can call them auntie because of that. Then if I run into someone who is from my maternal grandfather's clan, I can call them Che, my paternal grandfather. And those people that are from the Tachini clan, I can call them Shinale, my paternal grandfather. So that's how, on a personal level, relationships among the Navajo people are established. And even in a group setting, like if you have a meeting and you're one of the speakers, you go up front and you introduce yourself, you introduce your clan, and then right away people in the audience, they're going to say, hey, that's our son up there talking, or hey, that's our grandfather up there talking. And so they tend to, you establish rapport with them in that way, just almost immediate rapport with them. And then if you tell them, the other part of our introduction is where we're from, like Teresa was saying, where we're from. That ties us back into the land. Within the 4 sacred mountains, that puts us back into the land where we come from. And that is what also gives us strength as a people, as a person. It can give us strength also. Okay, let's move on. So here's a self-intro practice. So I'm going to have you practice. Fill in the blanks, okay? So the first one you will put in your maternal clan. The second blank you will put in your father's clan. Then the third one you will put in your maternal grandfather's clan. And the fourth one you will put in your paternal grandfather's clan. So this isn't your surname, okay? It's not, we're not talking about your last name. We're talking about your ancestry. Where do you actually come from? Do you come from Germany? Do you come from the Russian people? Do you come from India? Those are the things, the ethnic groups that you would put into your self-introduction. So I'll give you maybe one or two a chance to say your self-introduction.
Hi, I just joined. Are you speaking to each person?
Say your self-introduction. Go ahead and fill in the blanks and say your self-introduction. Whoever, maybe one or two of you can volunteer.
Okay.
Roxanne, you want to give it a shot?
Somehow, David, I knew you were going to call on me. Okay, I will give it a shot if you help me with
Sure,
the Navajo
I'll help
words.
you, exactly.
Okay, the Diné. Okay, She'e.
So start with a greeting.
Okay. Oh, ya ate.
Yeah, very good. Yeah.
She'e.
Uh-huh.
Indiana. Nishti.
Okay, so Indiana is not an ethnic group. What's your
Okay.
ethnic group?
Oh, it's ethnic.
Your mother's ethnicity.
Yeah, so it would be German.
Uh-huh.
German Nishti.
Yeah. Yes.
And then father would be Do. Poland Ba Shini.
Yes.
Then same A Do.
Uh-huh.
German Dash Ishie.
Dashiche, yes.
And Do Poland Dash in Eli.
Dashinale. Uh-huh.
Nale.
Very good. So do, that D-O-O you see means and. Then the ado that you see means and then, okay? That's what those words mean. Anybody else want to give it a shot? That was very good.
Thanks, David.
Anybody else? Summer?
I don't know my paternal grandfather or maternal grandfather's ethnicities.
Okay. Most of the time,
Whoever raised you.
Like the first example, she used German and Poland, right? So most of the time, people will just use that same one for Shiche and Shinale. Unless they're from a different group, your paternal grandfather's from a different group.
He is, we don't know.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Lisa?
I don't know. I don't know. All I know is American. So I'm not a really good one here.
See, this gives you some homework. If you go out on the Navajo reservation, you're going to have to learn this. So you have to research your ethnicity, your ancestry. Go to ancestry.com and research it. Then you'll have a self-introduction that you can use.
All right, David, I'll do that because I'm going on the reservation.
Exactly. Josh?
Yeah.
Want to give it a shot?
Sure. Yate.
Very good.
She. Mexico. Nishti.
Mexican.
Nishti.
Yes, exactly.
Do. California. It was, I guess that's Mexico before it became the United States. California.
Okay, so then you still just stay with Mexican.
Okay, Mexican. Bashichin.
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 Yeah, very good.
Ado. Mexican. Dashiche. Do. Mexican. Dashinali.
Very good. So I know with the who is it? The Irish people, they have clans already. So if you're Irish, you could even go back and use your clan that is in Ireland and use that as your self-introduction. I don't know if Mexico has like the different groups also.
Well, you know, for me, it's, well, as a Mexican American, a lot of our native ancestry has been lost. So
Yeah.
I know from my grandparents that I have heard that I do have, like, I believe it's from SETI natives in Mexico.
Oh yeah.
Yoeme, but I don't know how to trace that because over the years that was erased from our family histories.
So this is just a good opportunity to go back, and if you ever get a chance to go to the reservation, you can use this as a way of bridging the gap between you and the Navajo people. And they like it when you do that. When you come to the res and you introduce yourself this way, they like it. They love it.
Yeah.
And they see that you're trying to connect with them.
Yeah. This is awesome. Thank you.
I also wanted to add that in our culture, as in many native cultures, we have a matrilineal society. So in our clanship, a lot of our clans are carried on through our females, through the women in our societies. So like I say, I'm Deerwater, I'm Binkpetodni. My great-great-granddaughter will still be a Binkpetodni. So that never leaves through the female lineage. Whereas in the father's side, they become the father and then they become the paternal grandfather, and that's it. It ends there. So for the women, it continues. So I just wanted to add that. So we constantly have those teachings for all of our female young ladies, and it's one of the cornerstone teachings within our culture.
Exactly. Okay, let's move on. Very good, guys. Thanks for participating. All right, so now we talked about the kinship ties, and now we're into the action part of it. The effective action, meaning there's a certain affection that is associated with kinship, and then that affection should lead into action. And then what it also should also do is it should also bring us together in solidarity as a community or even as a tribe. So that's another part of kinship. Go ahead. So some of the values and action that come out of kinship are expressed this way. Ayo'one, which means love. And then ahasin, compassion and kindness. And then ahuinitle, generosity. A'ahuint, hospitality and friendliness. So when we know that a certain person is related to us, either as our grandfather or as our grandmother, we would treat them as if they were our real grandfathers and our real grandmother. So we would be generous to them. We would have compassion for them. We would have hospitality for them and love. And that's why I don't know if it's as prevalent today as it was earlier in earlier times when people used to use a lot of affectionate terms to one another. They say stuff like hashine, ahalane. They would say those terms, and those terms express deep affections for one another. And they even cried. It brings them to emotion when they express that kind of hashine, shiyaje, hashine, shema, ahalane, shema. That really brings emotion into the picture, that emotion of love, compassion. And so that's the action that we're talking about. There's a certain affective action that can produce in society and in interpersonal relationships. Go ahead. So on the other side is the idea of solidarity, understanding each other, interpersonal sensitivity, working together, collaborating with one another, right? Amplify peace, conflict resolution. So those are things that can happen because of in the community, because of in the tribe. It brings a certain solidarity to your group, to your community, to your tribe. So that's what I mean, that there's a certain effective action and solidarity that produces. Go ahead. So there's a relational outworking of it. And as Teresa was saying earlier, with that relational outworking comes respect for that person. When we realize that a certain person is our grandfather, we'll respect them as our grandfather. If we realize that a certain person is our mom by clan, we'll be responsible for that person, for helping that person, for having compassion for that person. And that's especially important right now with this COVID-19 pandemic going on. I mean, we that live out here in the city, when we heard that the Navajo, our relatives back home, were going through this pandemic and they were really struggling, our hearts were just like breaking for them. And we were concerned for our relatives. I wonder how they are doing. And we would ask people, how are these guys doing? How are those guys doing? We were always questioning people about, because our hearts were going out to them. We sense a certain responsibility for them. And so when we meet them, we respect them as well.
I also wanted to include in these concepts, these values, in each one of them, it's important to note that every one of these has understanding. There's a teaching of understanding, and then listening to understand, and then active listening. Mm-hmm. So it's not so much listening to respond, which right now it seems like we have a higher percentage of individuals who practice that. And so that's what I wanted to include on this.
And that's why that's very important to clanship, understanding one another, and then interpersonal sensitivity, right? Trying to understand each other rather than just waiting to respond back to that person. Okay, go ahead. So now let's bring in the philosophical part of this. In Navajo, they have what they call a philosophy of life, which is the phrase for that is and there's a lot of deep level teaching with this too, but we're just going to touch the surface of this. And on the basic level, what that means is, go ahead and click. So means, oh, go back one more. Living in harmony and beauty. That's kind of just the basic concept of what that means. And so living in harmony and then beauty. Of course, beauty is more.
So it's not beauty as in what you see, but beauty in a personality, just basically how an individual would be well-rounded, I guess, in today's standards or definition of what beauty, I get the concept of beauty that they teach at home.
Okay, go ahead. So within this philosophy of this and the teaching associated with it, there are certain empowering values and teachings associated with it. Okay, go ahead. So there's kind of a duality in the teaching. One side of it talks about which is the blessing way teaching. These are attitudes and behaviors that are encouraged with children. From the time they are born, we try to teach them these certain attitudes and behaviors as they start growing up. So there's some examples here. Go ahead and click. So like the ones that are, I underline a few of these. Again, the hospitality. We try to teach our children to learn to be hospitable and friendly to other people. We try to teach them to respect and value things. The third one down, underline, you maintain a balanced mindset. On the second column, you have thinking for self-reliance. We try to teach our children to do that. And self-awareness, being aware of yourself. So Carissa might attest to this because when she was in school, sometimes she would come to me with a question about her schoolwork. And rather than just give her an answer, I would start questioning her. Okay, what does it mean to you? Well, what have you learned in class that might relate to this? So rather than just give her an answer, I try to let her think for herself and find the answer for herself. So that's what Atan Tsitsike, you try to teach your children to think that way. Then the third one on the right hand side, Hahojon, having a positive and happy outlook to others. So those on that list, there's quite a few more, and then there's even more to that than just the ones that I listed here. These are just there for examples. So that's these are attitudes and behaviors that we try to encourage with our children as they are growing up. The blessing way teachings. Okay, go ahead, click. Then on this other side of the coin is the Hashkejanantin, which is the protection way teaching. These are attitudes that we discourage our children not to have, and the behaviors not to do. So most of it is summarized in these two on the right that are underlined. Do ajitida, negative actions, and then do ajinida, negative speech. One shouldn't say that, one shouldn't do that. So if you look at all of these, most of them have that do ta, do ta, do hosoyeta, do adahostelada, do ado lebich nijilida, do ta, kind of goes through that whole set of teachings that we try to teach our children. Do ta means no. So in Navajo, actually there's two no's in Navajo. One is ntaga, and the other one is do ta, right? So ntaga means when you ask a yes or no question, right? Then you answer with ntaga. So let's say Carissa comes and asks me, hey, Dad, are you working tomorrow? And I say, ntaga, no. It answers a yes or no question, right? Then she says, oh, okay. since you're not working, may I borrow the vehicle tomorrow? And I would say, Tota, which means it's a permissive no, right? Tota, no, you can't use the car tomorrow. Exactly, when she was a teenager. So that's the difference between the two. So, but there's a couple in here in the middle on the left side that is more of a positive, that doesn't have that Tota in it. Ajtil, right? Self-discipline, preparation for challenges. Na'atijin tra, challenging yourself, asserting your potential. So those are hashkejan na'antin, protection way teachings. These are attitudes that you try to, they're almost like warrior-like teachings. Teachings that you might have a warrior try to learn, like especially ajtil and na'atijin tra, especially those. We try to teach our children to do that. And of course, Carissa will tell you that I used to get these kids up almost every morning and have them run with me. I ran with them. I didn't just have them go out and run by themselves. I ran with them to try to teach them self-discipline, try to challenge themselves, and so on and so forth. So that's what I taught my children.
So within a home, when you have a mother and a father, a majority of the time it's the mother's the one that gives a lot of the nurturing teachings to her children. And so a lot of the teachings, they take place around the table when you're going to eat. So our parents always taught us, when you are cooking or preparing food, you prepare those with positive thoughts and then meditation, so that when you sit down at the table, and you would be able to feed your child those thoughts and that meditation that you use to prepare your food, that's what you're feeding them. And so all these distractions are put aside. For example, here at our home, when we have dinner or when we eat, we have a no tech, no TV, those types of teachings, and those are not allowed while we're having dinner. And so in addition to that, for the fathers, they are the disciplinarians. So in some homes, when children are told no from a mother, then they'll go to the father and trying to get their way by asking for whatever it is, whether it's the vehicle or going out with their friends or whatever the case may be. But in order to make sure that these teachings are the same, it's important that with the mother, as a mother, you're taught that you should practice your blessing way teachings as well as your hashkeja na'antin for your children. So I think that that's important within a home. And of course, there's many households that have single parents also. So in those types of settings, then both of them are utilized at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Okay, let's move on. So as they begin to grow up, as the kids begin to grow up, they get to a point where they're young adults, and they go from children into adulthood, and they become a ts'ah and Diné. A ts'ah is a young woman, Diné is a young man. And then Bii Yisi means there's something that's admirable about them. So a ts'ah to Diné Bii Yisi, that's what we try to raise with our children. Excelling young adults with admirable attributes. So go ahead, move forward. So these are some things that we hope by the time they become young adults, these are some qualities we hope they have. Respectfulness, thoughtfulness, disciplined, hardworking, supportive, empathetic, positive, enthusiastic, go ahead. Loyal, reliable, creative, artistic, peaceful, harmonious, deliberate, and self-control. So hopefully when we teach them properly, these are the types of attributes that they have by the time they become young men. So our goal is, go ahead, they should be exhibiting spirituality, reciprocity, and wisdom. And our twofold goal then is, go ahead, Yat Eko Inna, a life that is attributed with physical, mental, and social well-being. Then the other part of that twofold goal is Yis Ahna'ata, a long, fulfilling life. That's what we want for our kids. That's what we want for ourselves. We want a good life, Yat Eko Inna, and then we want to live long, fulfilling lives, Yis Ahna'ata. And that's what we try to instill in our children through the teachings that we have, the teachings of Keh and the teachings of our philosophy. That's what we try to instill in our people and in our children and in our young people. Hopefully by the time they reach this age, they are exhibiting that spirituality, they're exhibiting that reciprocity, they're exhibiting that wisdom. Go ahead. So provides principles for, go ahead, development of well-being and protection from the imperfections of life. So that's what we want for our kids. Go ahead. So as you can see again, both the Neh philosophy and then the Keh, they both kind of have a similar purpose of personal engagement. These things like love, compassion, kindness, generosity, we try to teach those things to our kids, our young people, and then even as adults, we try to emulate those practices and those behaviors and those attitudes as we live with one another. Go ahead. So when you think about it, these time-honored teachings are very much like some of the same best practices that we hear about today in our society. The ideas of generosity and compassion, love, understanding one another, teamwork, all of those were something that is already instilled in our culture. And those are some of the best practices that people try to put in practice in our world today. Go ahead. And even in the workplace is something we try to do as well. And having hospitality, friendliness, positive, happy outlook. When you think about the workplace, what's that talking about? Go ahead. Talks about customer service, right? Then when you talk about do'ajatinida and do'ajanida, that talks about corrective action. So we have both of those even in the workplace. That philosophy, that behavior, that attitude, it also works in the workplace as well as out in society. Go ahead. So what are some factors that might cause disconnects? Go ahead. One is communication. Communication can cause a disconnect. Another one is trust, right? Trust can cause disconnects. Another one, perspectives. We talked about perspectives. Another one, stereotypes. Yes, all of those cause disconnects in these relationships, right? So when you talk about communication, that can involve like a communication style that people have. Some people are pushy when some people are rude, some are aggressive, some are passive. The way you communicate is important, right? And if you communicate, and even the body language, right? The body language can communicate something differently than what you're trying to say. And then trust, of course, with Native people, we have 500 years of mistrust that we're trying to overcome. More than 500 years now of mistrust that we're trying to overcome with the with Western society and what it brought upon us. And then perspectives, of course, again, people have different perspectives and stereotypes. People might say something like, oh, you're pretty articulate for a Native person, right? And that could take a person off. So these are examples of things that can cause disconnects in relationships and even in the workplace as well, if we extend it even that far. All right, go ahead. And then of course, the last one is values and beliefs. Our values and beliefs are usually different from other people's values and beliefs. But as you have seen, there are some areas where they're really very similar. The best practices that we were talking about, and then the time-honored teachings of the Navajo, we actually have similarities. And if we can learn to find those connections, I think we would get along a lot better than we sometimes do. Go ahead. So takeaways. In our modern era, I guess Navajos face some real challenges when it comes to trying to maintain harmony and balance because of all these differences, because of the stereotypes, the perspectives, all the other things going on in our society. Many times Navajos face those challenges. But we also know that these time-honored principles from our philosophy provide some relevant parallels with contemporary relationships and practices. And then the third takeaway is trying to understand that, trying to understand the differing ideologies so that we might try to integrate these practices and be inclusive in our relationships. So let's close with this quote from Brené Brown. People are opting out of vital conversations about diversity and inclusivity because they fear looking wrong, saying something wrong, or being wrong. Choosing our own comfort over hard conversations is the epitome of privilege. We've heard a lot about privilege recently, and it corrodes trust, moves us away from meaningful and lasting change. And that concludes the presentation. I want to thank you for giving us the time to share our perspectives on this. And hopefully it's helpful to you and whatever you're doing.
David and Teresa, before you say goodbye, I'd like to say the comments were so positive. You know, so many phrases people pulled out that were so meaningful. Teresa, when you said, you know, the practice of meditating while you're cooking because you're feeding your family thoughts and food, wow, that is such, you know, and then you use the phrase time honored. I can just see the hundreds and hundreds of years of that practice and how beneficial. And I kind of want to go back and raise my kids using that. But we did get one question that I would like to pose if you're okay with that.
Sure.
And it came from the beginning of your presentation. And here's the question. It's from Chuck. Does the clan introduction ever cause relational difficulties? And then the follow-up is, does prejudgment ever come into this?
I think with the mixture of, I know in the workplace, it might bring some misunderstandings, the clan introduction, because some managers, because they went off to school and learned, they might have gotten a degree in business or whatever, they come back to the res and they try to separate our clan relationships from the workplace. And they say that they have this idea that the two shouldn't be used together. But what we believe is that the two really actually help each other. They can help each other. They can help establish stronger relations in the workplace. Even between boss, supervisor, and employee relations, it can establish some good relations because of the clan introduction. So yes, there are some ideas floating around today that we shouldn't intermingle the two concepts together, but we believe that they should be intermingled together. And what was the second part of the question?
Well, the second part, what kind of goes along with it, does prejudgment ever come into this? Because you talked about the clans having certain traits. So would you prejudge someone with those traits?
I think
hopefully they're all good traits. I don't know.
It's more in a joking kind of way that people do that. And they say stuff like, oh, those Kia'ani, they're so somehow kind of that's what people will usually say about each other. So it's more of a joking thing to them. And that's the way Navajos are. They like to joke a lot. They like to laugh. And so even with things like that, even with when there's differences and stuff like that, kidding is a part of our culture. Kidding and laughing is a part of our culture. We even celebrate the baby's first laugh, right? We even celebrate that because that's important to us. And so those type of things are a part of our culture. And I think that makes us unique.
I just want to add that each clan has personality traits that's important to acknowledge. And I will use this as a demonstration. David here, his father is Tudichitni. So he always says the real Tudichitnis, that's who we are, he says. And so a clan trait of a Tudichitni is they're very assertive with a silver lining of stubbornness. But they're very assertive, they're very goal-oriented, and it's very hard to deviate them from whatever they're trying to accomplish. So that's how a Tudichitni, that's their clan trait. And so when you talk about the clan of salt, Ashinhe, the Ashinhe is part of our creation stories. And so the salt that we give out when a baby laughs, that comes from the salt people. They were called Ashinhe Astan. So they have songs and they have prayers that are associated with that whole clanship. So they're very generous. And so all salt clans have that, personality trait. But when you push them, like if there's challenges in the way, they will stop and then they'll step back and they will divert, whatever that obstacle is. So even the Bipetodni clans, they have their own personality traits also. So a lot of times when you watch these different clans, they have a lot of commonalities that I guess links them. And so when you start asking, okay, so what is your clan? You already have an idea. So if you know what these clan traits are, you can understand how to talk and to communicate with them.
It's very similar to some of the, like the traits that they talk about, the trait theories that they talk about. If you can understand a person based on their traits, then you can work with them, find a way to work with them better, right? And that's the way these kinship clans are. If you understand them, then you can work with them in a much higher level than if you would if you didn't understand them. And the other part about clanship is that it's inclusive. Like people that aren't even a part of the clanship system, we also relate to them. And we use, and from my teaching, from what I learned, we use the grandfather and grandmother term for them. So someone who's not even a part of our clan system, I can refer to them as my che, right? As my maternal grandfather or my maternal grandmother or my grandson and my granddaughter. So it has that inclusiveness built into it. There's another teaching that says you use the cousin term for people that are outside the clan system. So there's two ideas there. Some people use the cousin clan, Shishna Ash, then others use the Shiche relationship term to refer to them. So what the clanship system also does is it kind of eliminates names, but focuses on the relationship.
Mm. Oh,
So
that's
people
beautiful.
refer to one another as Shema, Shije, Shishna Ash, Shiche. Even in like a legislative session of the Navajo tribe, when they're in session, they refer to one another as by their clanship. Thank you, my maternal grandfather, for giving me this space to speak, and so on like that. What do you mean by what you said in this particular instance? My grandfather, what did you mean by when you said this in your presentation? Things like that. They use the relationship term more than they use names.
And it's also important to note that that practice depends upon age. So if somebody is closer in age to you, then you refer to that individual as a cousin.
Mm-hmm.
But if they're much older than you, then they become either your mother, your grandfather, or your grandmother.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I feel like we all would like to keep going with this. You have been so warm in sharing. Lisa is going to close this out, but I just want to say to you, because I had the pleasure of reading all the comments, and the comments are how beautiful all of this is. And I, for one, in a time of COVID, needed this uplift and this focus on positive. So before I turn it over to Lisa, I just want to say thank you very much. Lisa?
David and Teresa, you're delightful, and we want more time with you. And I think it's obvious we're all kind of leaning in. And you've shown us, you've shared your culture and your hearts, and you painted a beautiful picture of the Navajo people and of your family, your clans. And, you know, so many words I heard, and some were just kind of insinuated, but honor and respect and relationship. And I think if we would all focus on that, we can create a better world together, which is what we're so needing right now. And really coming together in unity and focusing on our commonalities, which I heard you say. And so again, we've learned so much, a lot to take away with this, to really process as individuals and even, you know, together. So I would encourage everyone, you know, keep the conversation going. If there's somebody you can share this with and have dialogue with and continue to learn, we'll post more resources on our website. So it can, this is the beginning. And again, I want to encourage you, we're going to have a mini introduction course at the end of August. So get on our website. This is a narrative that this is something that we are really leaning into, is Amplify Peace and wanting to learn more and to be a part of this. And so we want each one of you to have friendships, establish friendships, crossing borders and lines. And I think that's how we can change the world. So again, thank you. David, I want to conclude with one question. And I just want to ask you, you know, you mentioned 500 years of mistrust. And, you know, the history is hard. It's a hard history for the Native American people. What gives you hope on this day as we look forward into future generations? And from this day forward, what gives you hope?
I think when we have connections like this that we have tonight, I think that's one of the things that brings hope to me, especially in a time when with all, not just the COVID thing going on, but with the protests and other things associated with that, the racism and all that, there's people that are still trying to connect on a human level. And I think that's one of the things that brings hope for me, that things can turn for the better. And of course, a lot of that hope for me personally is based in my faith, in my faith in God, and even this relationship thing. I think about that in that context, in the context that there are believers from every tribe, every nation in this world, and that's what the that's what our faith is all about, reaching out to those tribes. And hopefully connections like this that we make with one another, if that can continue to grow, then I think that a lot of that brings a lot of hope to me as a person to see that